Hi, I'm Melissa at last. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to my garden, Rose Ether Cherubim. So today we are talking about how God sees your heart. Now, God knows our inner workings and He helps us shift to a more balanced place. And our corresponding verse today, we're going to be in Proverbs. And you know how much I love Proverbs. It's such great information, such a great way to structure your mindset on how to move through this life. So we are in verse 1, and verse 1 says, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the rivers of the water, and he turneth whithersoever he will." So, and let's go to number 2 as well. "Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord pondereth the hearts." 3. "And to do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice." Right? So, obedience over sacrifice. Honoring God's voice and what He wants for us and the direction He's guiding us in, most importantly. And 2, the way that we see things and the way that we look at the world and the way that we think somebody may be right for a situation or things are good or this person is good, we have to understand that God sees us all the way through and sees the people that we come in contact with all the way through. So we have to rely on what God is showing us because He sees into the heart. He knows who the pure hearted is, and He knows what people's intentions are more than we can ever perceive, despite how experienced we are in dealing with people and despite how well or how long we may have known somebody. God truly knows their heart. So we have to trust and we have to be obedient to what God is showing us. And there's many ways, that God sees the heart. And now we're back to verse 1 where the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord and the rivers of the water, and he turn it whithersoever way he will. And that's the most important because oftentimes we're going through things and we experience relationships, friendships, different things where it was great in the beginning or it wasn't great in the beginning and then it became great. And we have to understand that, God will close off hearts and He'll turn it, so oftentimes you hear about people who, hated each other when they first met each other and then ended up becoming great friends. So it's all a matter of God's will. And in all matters of the heart, God's will is there. His hand is there. And we have to have that understanding that God sees our heart, but His hand also has control in all matters of the heart. From it says a king here, but to put it in more modern terms, for example, a judge. You come across a judge or you're in a position where you're to be judged. God is the one that controls the heart. It doesn't matter what you say or how you present yourself. Oftentimes we are in a world that is shallow. So if you're dressed well, if you, look attractive, if you do these certain things, you may gain favor. But you also have to understand that you're just playing a game in that aspect because God controls the heart and He'll turn it whichever way He needs to for His will to be fulfilled. And once we understand that, we stop playing the game of shallowness. And what exactly does it mean that God turns our hearts whithersoever way He will? It's God can open hearts to you. God can close off hearts to you. God can change a heart's posture towards you. But also, more importantly, what He does is within us. The way that we were as children, as teenagers, we go through things that, may hurt our hearts or may harden our hearts. And God can always bring us back to this healthy, balanced place of protecting our heart and getting it back to that pristine space that we were as a child. We're very loving and very open. And before we were... Okay. one of my paintings fell, and I've been using this new tape to kind of hoist them up there, so I have to keep drilling holes into the wall. But it's not really working. So, and it scared me. See, the painting that fell is like that little red one you can see back there. That is the interpretation of Christ talking about, I see Satan come down like lightning, and then my painting came down like lightning. This freaked me out a little bit, scared me. But that brought me to a remembrance of how God can change our heart. And a lot of us, when we're going through the journey, we see people who are like, I hate Satan, and Satan can never do anything to me, and stuff like that, and demons and devils, and you're possessed, or you have a bad spirit upon you. And those are when we grow and when we walk further into our journey, we begin to understand that though we may hate what Satan represents, and we may not like, the methods of which he uses to swift us, it doesn't mean that we hate, Satan, because he is doing the will of the Father. He is, he really, you find this out in Job. He can't touch Job without God's permission. For him to do things, he needs God's permission. He ultimately is just holding a job title, right? And he may be very good at this job title, and it hurts us to see people fall for the tricks or fall for the tactics. But as we grow, we begin to understand that he is just doing his part, and we begin to not hate anything that is working in accordance to divine law and God's will. And God begins to grow us in this way where we don't hate anything. We have a kind of understanding. Even when people hurt us or people are doing things, we can begin to understand that they're coming from a traumatic state. Do I want that person near me? No. Am I going to allow certain behaviors, around me and around my peace? Also, no. But I don't hate that person because I can understand where they're coming from. My heart can begin to look at them as just another being, another spirit who is going through something that doesn't give them peace, that they're lacking joy. Whatever it is, however we choose to identify it or see it, we now can begin to see it, because we know that God saw our heart and what we were when we weren't behaving at our best, when our mentality needed to mature, when we were at a place where we needed grace, to come forward and be the best versions of ourselves. And the best and most beautiful thing that we can do is offer that to each other, because God gave us that when we were at, some of our worst times, when we were, acting in a way that was unbecoming and uncultured and uncouth and with no decorum. We were a little wild too. So when we recognize that, in any outside experiences of us, it moves us away from being able to hate, because God saw our heart. And it's more than just the potential. He knew what our heart would become, and he knew that it was going to be a great place for him to dwell and live in. So we need to understand that everybody else has that opportunity too. Every spirit we come across, and again, this is in the spiritual realm, but also in the physical realm. Each spirit has that opportunity to be able to house God and be a great, vessel for the Most High. And the same way that God saw that capability and opportunity within us, it is important that we give that grace and that extension to others that surround us or that we come in contact with it through our journey. So there was times that God changed my heart, and there's this particular time in this particular friendship that I had where he was my cousin. I didn't know he was my cousin. You know, it's one of those cousins that are like 2, 3 times removed, but we were the same age, and we ended up like meeting in middle school. And he had a reputation for being like really mean and really rude and kind of like stuck up, and I kind of got that vibe from him too. So I really had no intention of like getting to know him, and I don't know how we started talking or how we started getting along, but he ended up being like one of my best friends for a long time, but I had no intention of getting to know him. You know, I assumed what everyone else had said was true, that he was like rude and stuck up, and he kind of was, but he was also an incredibly fun person. And we ended up having like similar taste in music, similar taste in video games. We would hang out, and I was still very reserved when it came to like getting to know new people or, you know, starting new friendships. You know, I had gone through many friendships at that point where, you know, I get tried, I get talked about, I get all these things. So, you know, doing it again was kind of like, yeah, I didn't want to, but it was kind of easy. And he was the kind of person that would like call me and check on me, and I'd be like, why are you calling me so much? And he's like, just want to talk to you, just want to see what's going on. And the conversation began to flow, and it was always funny. And he was one of the people that could kind of pick up on, you know, my ups and downs of like my moods and, you know, what me going through a depression. And he would notice it because, again, when you go through stuff like that, you're not as talkative as you usually are. So I'd just be quiet, and I'd have like, you know, my hoodie on, and he'd be like, oh, you know what you look like? You look like one of those sad emo girls. It's just there in their hoodie, and it's just sad. And I would start laughing. I'm like, shut the fuck up. like leave me alone. And that's how he would get me to kick out of it, you know, just by like poking at me, messing with me, and always using humor. And humor was like basically our language and how we talked. And when we were together, we're constantly laughing and constantly, you know, just kind of, you know, living life and getting through a lot of the difficult things that happen, you know, in your teenage years. So, you know, my heart was closed off. Wasn't looking for a new friend. I wasn't looking for a best friend. And he was my best friend for many, many years. You know, even, you know, from middle school, high school, and college, like we were incredibly close. And he's one of the people that certain things he said and done still make me laugh to this day. And I miss him incredibly. You know, ultimately our lives took us in different paths, and we got to a point where we didn't agree on things. And, you know, I felt tried, and so did he. And, you know, we split ways, but he was my best friend for a lot of years. And being friends with him like opened up my mind to, I don't know what a person has inside their shell. So to always just leave room and leave space for a person to, you know, connect and kind of leave that opening open, where it's like, okay, you know, I didn't expect to have a friendship with this person, and much less them be my best friend for like over a decade. So it allowed me to be open-minded and open-hearted to how you can connect with somebody, and how well you can connect with somebody, and how much joy and happiness and laughter, you know, another person can bring you and wants to bring you, and just to allow, you know, that space for that to unfold. So you never know who God is going to bring, you know, into your heart, you know, because God is the one that truly sees within us. He knows the experiences that we need, the people that, you know, we can help and can help us. And again, all our inner workings, you know, God is bringing us to this great, loving and balanced place, a place where we were, you know, like children, and we were open to, you know, different people who came into our lives, you know, a place that we were operating out of love before the hurt, before learning different things that we learn as, you know, we kind of go through this world. So this also brings me to, we've been in 21, but let's jump to 22. And let's see. And I like verse 7. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. So we have to also understand that what we feel in our heart, it's important to take out any specks of darkness, any specks of hate or dislike or prejudice, in any aspect of life, because God sees it. That's not something that we can hide. We can hide it from the world, but we cannot hide it from our Creator. And if we have any of that specks in there, it kind of thwarts and it hinders us having these great experiences, in life with people, with animals, with different things that we experience and that we're meant to experience, that God wants us to bring. And ultimately, it blocks the way of love. So we have to be sure that we are moving in a pure-hearted way. If there are specks of darkness in there, to bring it to God and have it be removed, and kind of learn this way, this open-minded way that we have, as children, as spirits who first came here, to be like, everything is God and then everything is love, and to be able to move in that manner. And then we can kind of open up and flow in a way that brings these great things and people towards us. So our prayer that we are going to focus on today is asking God for his help in all matters of your heart, and to pray to him about healing and maintaining a pure heart. That's going to be very important. We do need his help and his guidance in all matters of the heart. Because even if we're feeling things in our heart that we don't quite understand, or that we're just having trouble processing, or that we're not aware is there, God is aware that it's there. And removing specks of darkness and having that open place where he can dwell is most important. So we need to talk to him about the different areas that we need healing in, and how do we maintain a pure heart so that it's a place for him to dwell comfortably. And our gratitude for today is going to be thanking God for all the times that he's healed our heart, and how he's guided us to emotional safety, and to thank him for where we stand now in our healing journey. So I know you have a beautiful heart, and it's filled with love and love to give. So let's just do our necessary work and our necessary self-inventory so that it stays that way and it grows and it brings in everything that you want. All right, friend, I love you. But remember, God loves you more. We'll talk more next time. Bye.